So let's dive in. The violent God of the Old Testament. Is there another way at looking at these violent passages like the flood, where God said, I will blot out humanity from the earth? Yes, there is. We need to read the Bible the way the ancient Israelites read the Bible. And they attributed everything back to God, whether it's good or bad or in the middle, because God is the creator, so the buck stops with him. You need to go back to the previous teaching, or this one ain't going to make much sense. Here is the ancient Hebrew mindset. What God allows for them is described as him actively doing because he's the creator. Now, Jesus does not accept this worldview. We are really focusing on the flood in this series because that's the most drastic example of divine violence in the Bible. Global genocide. And I'm going to show you that they understood this to mean God allowed the flood, therefore he's to blame for it. All right? He's responsible for it. Where does the Bible say that God's responsible for everything? We're looking at the ancient Hebrew view, remember? Not the Christian view, not the view of Jesus. It's found in Isaiah 45 verse 7 in the King James Version. Listen, God's responsible for everything, and it tells you why. I form the light and create darkness. I make peace and create evil. I, the Lord, do all these things. Wow. God does all these things. What? Darkness, light, peace, and even evil. Why? Because I create the darkness and I create evil. It's because God is the creator. Because God is the creator in the Old Testament, in the ancient Hebrew view, because he's the creator, the buck stops with him, good or bad. So anything that happens is attributed back to God. Why? Because he is the creator. And now, a few verses down in this chapter, he'll actually say that God's responsible for everything, good and bad, and even evil, because his role as creator. That was the understanding of ancient Israel. Look at verses 12 and 18 of Isaiah 45 in the English Standard Version. Note the references to create. Verse 12 and 18 says this: I made the earth and created man on it. It was my hands that stretched out the heavens, and I commanded all their host. For thus saith the Lord, who created the heavens. He is God, who formed the earth and made it. I am the Lord, and there is no other. Did you catch how many references there were to made and create and formed? Everything that happens in this life, in the ancient Jewish view, not Jesus' view, goes back to him, good or bad, because he is the creator. So Isaiah 45:7 says that he creates evil. Why? Verses 12 and 18 in the same chapter tells us why. I'm the creator. The buck stops with him. This is the ancient Hebrew view. Whether God did it directly or not, it's attributed back to him. Let's go with the very first story in the Bible, and we're going to see that this principle is at work right there in creation. God creates the heaven and the earth in chapters 1, and then in chapter 2 he creates Adam and Eve, brings Eve to Adam, and then we move into chapter 3 and everything goes haywire. And Adam follows his wife Eve into sin by listening to the serpent, and look who Adam held accountable for his actions and why. Genesis 3:12, English Standard Version. The woman whom you gave to be with me. Hello, did you see that? The woman whom you gave to be with me. God created her from his rib. This woman that you created to be with me, she gave me the fruit of the tree and I ate. He puts the responsibility back onto God because he created woman. The buck stops with God. This isn't just a simple psychobabble story about blame shifting, which it is for us. This reveals an ancient Hebrew worldview that the buck stops with God. I did this because of the woman you created. You brought her to me. You made her. The buck stops with you. Even though Adam was the direct active agent of sinning in this passage, he attributes his responsibility back to God. That's the ancient Hebrew world view. In other words, here comes that one-liner again. In the Old Testament, in the ancient Hebrew worldview, what God allows because he is creator is ultimately attributed back to him as if he did it. He's responsible. So there's one example of this principle. More next time. God bless you.